Welcome to Season 3 of Adventures in Compliance. In this season, we are reviewing all of the Sherlock Holmes stories which are collected in the work The Return of Sherlock Holmes. It is a collection of 13 detective stories written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, marking the reappearance of the brilliant detective Sherlock Holmes after his apparent death in The Final Problem, which ended Season 2 and was the last story in the memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. The collection spans various intriguing cases and mysteries that Holmes and his loyal friend Dr. Watson tackle. First, a word from this month's sponsor of the Compliance Podcast Network, Ethico.
In the intricate world of ethics and compliance, each second is precious, and slow case closures are more than just delays, they're missed opportunities. Enter Ethico. Our solution revolutionizes case management, cutting case closure times in half and turning every challenge into a chance for improvement. Imagine a workspace where efficiency and compliance coexist harmoniously. Don't just dream of faster resolutions, make it your reality. Visit ethico.com/CPN today to book a demo and dive into our exclusive white paper by Tom Fox, 2023, The Year in Compliance. Empower your team with the tools they deserve.
Today we take up the third story in the book, The Return of Sherlock Holmes, The Adventure of the Dancing Men, which premiered in the Strand magazine on December 1903. It's one of my favorites. I know you'll enjoy it. If you enjoy this episode, you've enjoyed this series, or you just like stories about Sherlock Holmes, I hope you will subscribe or rate and review to this podcast wherever great podcasts are listened to. The Adventure of the Dancing Men. In the modern age of social media, receiving a message comprising of nothing but 15 stick figures executing a particular dance would probably not strike anyone as especially sinister. They would just assume the sender downloaded a new alphabet for their phone and forgot to change the keyboards before sending a text out. Inhabitants of late Victorian England did not possess this particular boon to their communicative powers. If they wanted to indulge someone with apparently meaningless hieroglyphs, they needed to create them by hand. And unless they attached a key to the code, they ran the risk of the recipient taking the message to Sherlock Holmes. At least that is how Mr. Hilton Kibet of Ridingthorpe Manor responded when he received a strange message, all the more so since his wife had behaved with the utmost distraction after its arrival. He takes the message to Holmes, and Holmes needs to know a little bit more about his wife. She is an American, and she has a past, so much of one, in fact, that one of the promises she extracted from her husband, even before they wed, was that he would never ask about their past. Apparently, there were some very disagreeable associations. Cubitt displayed curiosity, but his silence remained. First, there was a mystery of the letter that arrived from America, which he promptly burned. Then there were the dancing men found on pieces of paper left on the sundial and other items around the estate. Holmes asked to see an example of the figures as painstakingly as they could be recreated. And he determines there a code, a very worrying one, in which the last says, "Elsie, prepare to meet thy God." Holmes makes his way immediately to the Cubitt family home in Norfolk, but he is too late. Hilton is dead from a bullet wound to the heart, and his wife is gravely wounded with a bullet to the head. And local police have already written off the entire affair as a botched murder-suicide. Holmes disagrees, as only 2 bullets have been fired from Cubitt's gun, but there is a third bullet hole in the windshield and an empty shell casing in the flower bed next to the victims. And besides, he's cracked the code. Is there anybody in the vicinity named Elridge? And the stable boy answers in the affirmative. Mr. Elridge is a local farmer. And Slaney? Why, yes, he's the American lodger at Mr. Slaney's. Holmes quickly writes a message employing the same code of the dancing men and sends it to the boy to deliver to the American, and he sits back to wait, taking advantage of the lull to explain what's happening to both Watson and the police. Slaney arrives and, shattered, is discovered that Elsie is barely clinging to life. He believed the message he received was from her, for he is one of her, quote, very disagreeable associations from her past, end quote, that she has been so reluctant to speak of to her husband. He is a former fiancé who has Chicago gangland connections. He followed Elsie to England, determined to win her back no matter what the cost. The dancing men were, of course, a code that he knew she would understand. When the codes didn't work, he went to the house directly to try to win Elsie, but he only found Elsie's enraged husband. Cubitt, he assures home, fired the shot when he was meeting him. Slaney only fired back in self-defense, killing Cubitt, and then ran. The third shot, Holmes explains, was fired by Elsie attempting suicide. This unexpected blow leaves the wicked foreigner in no mood to do anything other than quietly accompany the police to the station and trust in a jury's sympathy to not deliver him to the gallows. The Adventure of the Dancing Men is one of the best precursors for data-driven compliance that I have seen in the Sherlock Holmes oeuvre. Obviously, it is a story of fiction, but the insights that can be drawn from Holmes' approaches and strategies for solving the mystery can really help you as a compliance professional in your investigations. So, number one, attention to detail. Here, Holmes emphasizes the importance of paying attention to the smallest details. He meticulously studies the symbols and notices patterns which eventually lead to solving the mystery. This highlights the significance of observations and investigations, and I think this really points towards the next topic or issue and how you use data going forward. And that use, of course, is through pattern recognition. Holmes demonstrates exceptional pattern recognition skills throughout this story. He identifies the recurring elements in the symbols and connects them to real-world objects and events. This underscores the importance of recognizing patterns and making connections in your compliance program. Having the data is one thing. Pattern recognition is the next step. And then that goes to code breaking. The symbols in this story are obviously a form of code used for secret communication. Holmes employs his expertise in cryptology to decipher the code and unravel its meaning. This showcases the value of specialized knowledge and skills in solving complex puzzles or codes during investigations. This also speaks to what you have to do as a compliance professional to look for code words in business communications. Just this past week, in the Vitol trading trial, one of the recipients of Vitol Trading's bribes said that he called the bribes candies. So when you start to see candies and cookies and flowers and other rather non-business terms in your email communication of your business unit employees, perhaps you need to dig a little deeper. Creative thinking. Data-driven analytics gives you the opportunity to think creatively because remember, as compliance professionals, we're only limited by our imagination. Holmes uses creative and unconventional thinking to solve mysteries. In this story, he considered multiple hypotheses and explored different angles before arriving at the correct solution. This highlighted the importance of thinking outside the box and considering the alternative explanation during investigations. Collaboration. You probably don't think of data-driven compliance and collaboration together yet. They are critical because as a compliance professional, you may not have all the skills needed. You may need to bring in a CISO. You may need to bring in a CTO. You may need to bring in a data scientist. Whatever it may be, you may need some additional help in analyzing the data. Finally, critical analysis. Holmes engaged in critical analysis of the available evidence and information. He evaluated each piece of evidence carefully, separating fact from speculation and drawing logical conclusions based on sound reasoning. This underscores the importance of critical thinking and analytical skills in your work as a compliance professional, particularly around investigations. Compliance Podcast Network is sponsored this month by Ethico. Ethico is a leader for compliance champions like yourself with its ethics and compliance optimization system built to turn goals and guidelines into real ROI for your program. For more information and a special white paper, go to ethico.com/CPN. I hope you will join me through this entire series of short stories from the Return of Sherlock Holmes. If you're a Holmes fan or you enjoy analogizing to compliance, leadership, and ethics, this is the podcast series for you. I hope you will take the opportunity to reread one or perhaps all of the short stories. They're short reads and a lot of fun. I'm going to be taking a deep dive into each one of them, looking at leadership lessons, ethical lessons, and or compliance lessons from each one. If you're a Sherlock Holmes aficionado like myself, I'd love to visit with you about some of your favorite stories and perhaps record a podcast or two with you on them. So please contact me. You can reach me through the website of the Compliance Podcast Network. Adventures in Compliance is a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network. And as I mentioned, we are sponsored this month by Ethico. So I hope you will check out the Ethico white paper that's available through their special link on that we put in the show notes that I mentioned earlier. This is Tom Fox. I'm greatly looking forward to the return of Sherlock Holmes. Join me again next week for the adventure of the solitary cyclist.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.